Hey everyone, good morning. My name is Ken Sadkunim and I own North Star Technology Group. We help businesses make money by ensuring their employees are happy and productive, all while protecting their critical information from hackers. We do this by building fast, secure, and always available technology. Today we're joined by Travis Kroger. Travis is a commercial account manager with Bone and Associates, specializing in cyber liability insurance and risk management. As a self-taught technology enthusiast, Travis understands how to communicate complex cyber exposures in terms that business owners can understand. His focus is to assess his clients' risk in order to tailor coverage and risk mitigation strategies to fit their needs. As the cyber liability insurance market changes rapidly, Travis is constantly keeping up with trends, studying new policy forms, and fostering relationships with underwriters. At home, Travis prides himself as a dedicated family man, spending time with his wife and 2 children. Bone and Associates is an independent insurance agency located in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, dedicated to helping its clients assess, finance, manage, and reduce risk. Thank you, Travis, for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ken. That was a great introduction. So today we're going to talk about how cyber insurance protects your business. At the end of the day, it's up to you to make the best decisions for your business. We have figured out over the years that workplace safety is a key theme in the business world. It doesn't matter if you're a startup tech company with the latest standing desks or a general contractor looking into a new brand of hard hats. You know that employee injury leads to more expensive workers' compensation rates and downtime. It's worth investing in defense and mitigation strategies like training programs and insurance to help reduce those expenses. These are just a few of the things that people talk about when it comes to reducing downtime with the hard hats, the safety glasses, the high vis. And they do that to save money. They spend money to save it. When you talk to your typical small business's cybersecurity team, what do you guys do? I have actually gotten these responses. I tell my employees, don't click anything. I always ask if they've tried restarting it if it's running slow. And sometimes they call their nephews because they're the ones that have set up the websites. It's sad, and what happens is when there's a compromise, you have poorly trained employees, your IT department's overwhelmed, you have a backup strategy that doesn't work, and there's excessive downtime that could be the end of your business. So due to the ever-changing environment, cyber defense is a two-sided sword. North Star Technology Group does a great job implementing all the items in the left column. I won't pretend to be an expert on those, but I know that if you have just the left side, you're 90% more prepared than all the businesses out there. And you'll be a difficult target for hackers. However, everything has a cost, and I know that running a small business is often about compromise and keeping a balanced budget. And that's where the risk mitigation comes in. Yeah, everything's possible, but what's the likelihood? Insurance is more about picking up the unexpected costs associated with a cyber attack. An example of this is modern ransomware. You've heard about it in the news. Even with an offsite backup that's good, corporations are still paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep the bad actors from distributing the stolen information. They charge one ransom to decrypt the data and another not to sell it. So you have to trust these criminals. There are big companies spending big money on IT that are getting hacked due to business email compromise. You might hear it called BEC. The human element can often be the difference between an impenetrable fortress and a major security disaster. Last night when I was putting the final touches on this, I got a notification on my phone. Barnes & Noble got hacked. My information might be compromised. That's about all they told me. But it happens every day. But this presentation is more about cyber insurance and what it covers. There are two types of cyber coverage, first party and third party. According to CFC underwriting, first party claims make up 96% of all cyber claims. Third party makes up 4%. The difference between first party and third party is that first party covers your own costs incurred from a cyber breach. Third party covers the insured for liability actions that arise due to the cyber breach. So basically, if you get sued because your breach led to another company or person's downfall and you're found negligent. These are the 3 types of first party claims. Although the data may be other people's information, the courts have ruled that the organization in possession of that data at the date and time of breach is technically the owner of the data. They're responsible for the well-being of the data. The first type I want to talk about is the theft of funds. Theft of funds is an easy one because you can quantify it. You can physically see the money leaving your account. Wire transfer and credit card fraud are the 2 most common types that you can see here on the right-hand side. This is from the FTC's Consumer Sentinel Network data book from 2019. It's pretty alarming when you think about the number of people that lost money due to fraudulent wire transfers. There are businesses that do this every single day without even thinking about it, and it takes weeks to recover. These things can happen, this type of fraud can happen from phone calls, fake websites, phishing emails, legitimate looking pieces of mail, and sometimes it might even be someone pretending to be your uncle on Facebook. What they found is employee training is key. This summer, one of our insureds, a local restaurant, got taken for $1,900 in prepaid debit cards due to a phone scam. They had a person call in pretending to be high up in corporate with another person on the phone pretending to be the FBI. They scared a local manager into giving out $1,900 worth of prepaid debit card numbers. Last Christmas, one of our local friends, he's a local businessman, was 1 click away from sending away $500 in Best Buy gift cards. He had went out, purchased them, and was ready to give them the numbers via the email, but he couldn't figure out how to type them in on his phone. So he picked up the phone to call the person that was supposedly reaching out to him, and the business partner had no clue what was going on. This happens every day. And the bad actors, they're just getting more and more crafty as it goes on. So this is an example handled by one of my carriers. It's a long one, but bear with me, it's worth it because this really happens. A financial controller at an accounting firm receives a call from their bank. They say, hey, there's some suspicious wire transfers and your account, they knew the exact account number, is the one sending them. The bad actor then gave them the funds, or let them know that the funds were likely stolen and in immediate danger of losing the rest. They then urged them to freeze the account now, as fast as you can. The bad actors knew that the freeze required a password and a PIN code. So trying to stop the bleeding, the controller went ahead and provided the credentials. The hackers let the controller know that they had successfully froze the account. The next day, do a damage check. The controller calls the bank to verify, how bad was it? The bank says, you know what, I don't know what you're talking about. We didn't call you yesterday, but we do know that yesterday you transferred $146,000 out of the country into 3 separate accounts in 7 transfers. And we can't recall any of them. That's a gut check right there. And it happens all the time. So we're going to dig into this a little bit. The attack was traced back to a malicious link that was clicked by one of the partners who happened to be an Outlook admin. The bad actors got into the email systems and scouted around, waiting for their moment to pounce. They found correspondence between the controller and the bank and were able to gather the account number And after a little research, they found the bank's protocols for wiring money. The bad actors always express urgency in order to not give you time to sit back and think about it. This is a high pressure sales technique that has been working for centuries. Once the insured gave up the account credentials, the bank was no longer liable because it was a legitimate transfer. So without cyber insurance, that money's gone. There's nothing you can do about it. They tricked you, they swindled you. Luckily, this one has a happy ending. The insurance company paid $17,393 for a cyber forensic firm to determine the cause of the breach. They then paid the full amount to recover the lost funds. The total payout was almost $164,000, minus their $5,000 deductible. Like I said, this happens daily, and this particular company was lucky they had cyber insurance. The second type of cyber claim I want to talk about is theft of data. This is a big one. We've all heard about it in the news. Some of us were probably part of it. Who knows with this Barnes & Noble thing that I got last night, we'll see. So back in 2013, the Target attack happened. Basically, an HVAC vendor an HVAC vendor's credentials were stolen, leading to a targeted malware attack on a point-of-sale machines, which led to the stolen data of an estimated 110 million customers. In 2017, step ahead 4 years, technology came a long way. The Equifax breach was an attack by 4 Chinese military officers. The US government says the men disguised their hacking activity by routing an attack through 34 servers located in 20 countries, using encrypted communication channels within Equifax's network to blend in with normal network activity. While in the system, they managed to steal an estimated 163 million private records, including social security numbers. In 2019, Capital One experienced a little different style of hack. It wasn't a foreign nation. This was by a 33-year-old woman who lives in Seattle. Paige Thompson was a software engineer for Amazon Web Services, the company who hosted Capital One in the cloud. She was able to gain access by exploiting a misconfigured web application firewall that let her access over 100 million credit card applications. They're the ones that you fill out your social security number, your name, your address, your date of birth. She had 100 million of them on her personal computer. Since those attacks, state legislators have been playing catch up. As a result, there are now data breach notification laws in all 50 states, DC, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the US Virgin Islands. It had a major impact on the way that the government looked at the ownership of data and who's responsible for making it right. So how does these breaches of hundreds of millions of files affect you, the small business owner or decision maker? Sit back, think about, you get a phone call from your IT department, guy, nephew, whatever it might be. Your system's been infected. Okay, it happens. How bad is it? All those social security numbers, driver's license numbers, date of births that you record into your system in order to get pricing or tell people whether or not they can drive, that's all been taken. And it's all locked down. What do you, as a small business owner with limited resources, do? Well, that's when insurance kicks in. Let the professionals handle it. Insurance comes in, you call the breach hotline, they assign an incident response team to you. They pay for your legal fees, your regulatory fines. If you're supposed to be HIPAA compliant and all this information gets out there, you're going to get smacked with some fines. They pay for IT, professional IT. They pay for any sort of forensics that need to be taken care of to make sure they're not still in your system or see how deep they went. They take care of setting up crisis communication, all of this stuff, and you don't have to worry about it. You sit back and you cooperate, and that's all you do, and they handle the rest. I think at the end of the day, that peace of mind is one of the best things about cyber insurance for a small business owner. And this brings us to our third and final type of claim, damage to digital assets. Digital assets are much more than just personal identifiable information, like we're talking about with HIPAA. Nowadays, they don't care about the data they're stealing, and they don't want to just steal it. They want to put you in a pickle. They want your back up against the wall to the point where you're either going to have to lose hundreds of thousands or millions. You choose. We can kind of get an idea of that with the city of Baltimore. So back in 2019-ish, I think, they had a ransomware attack. It may have even been this year. The bad actors were asking for $80,000. The city, holding their ground, decided to go ahead and not pay the ransom. Instead, they had to recreate all of their databases, every piece of data on their computers, their networks, their servers, everything had to be recreated. It cost over $18 million. And if you look at the charts on the left-hand side, from 19 to 20, it went from, there's a dozen or so different sectors that are being targeted, to now nobody's safe, especially the professional services and the public sector, like the city of Baltimore I just mentioned. But before we dive into ransomware, Ken, can you help explain in more technical terms what ransomware is?
Yeah, I mean, short of getting too technical, ransomware is a type of software we call malware, which basically encrypts a victim's files and folders. And when that happens, the only way that a company or an individual can get access to those files is to pay money, typically in Bitcoin, and that's often the ransom that they're required to pay. And there are many different ways that people can get ransomware. The most common is through some kind of email phishing attempt, where a victim will get an email that looks like it's from a very, very legitimate source, but it contains a link or contains downloadable files of malware. The victim clicks on it, they go to a website, the software automatically downloads to the victim's computer, and then starts the process of encrypting the files. And then you get that dreaded message on your screen saying that your files are all encrypted and you need to pay. Another common method that we see of people getting ransomware is through exploit kits, where maybe the victim clicks on an ad, that could be potentially even on a legitimate website. The victim gets redirected to either a compromised landing page or a site where software is downloaded and encrypted. And we're also, of course, seeing attacks coming from outside of the environments as well. So we recently worked with a regional data center provider that had a server exposed to the internet. Travis earlier talked about some of these preventative measures that you can take. But in this example, they had left a server that they use for management purposes open to the internet for remote access. And so the bad actor exploited vulnerabilities in that, traversed the network, and basically looked for other vulnerable machines, detonated the ransomware, which infected not only their data and their servers, but also their backups. The ransom was $110,000 to get the data back. And even though with the ability to decrypt that data, it still took almost a month to get everything restored. But honestly, the business would have closed without having insurance to help reimburse not only for the ransom, but as Travis mentioned earlier, for the forensics, which was another $100,000, and even some of the time spent to do the restore. But without insurance, this organization would have been completely out of business. Travis.
All right, thanks, Ken. Mm-hmm. So he talked about the importance of insurance in a ransomware attack. Not only is it the expense that you can see, the 100,000, the 200,000, the $1 million ransom they're asking for. There are all these other expenses that insurance comes in and pays for and helps you negotiate. And the next few slides, we're gonna run through it. I break it down into 6 different categories: the breach response, business income, ransomware, firm, recovery, notification, and reputation. These are kind of the 6 major areas. So breach response, you get that dreaded message that Ken talked about. What do? Pick up the phone, you call your IT guy, go, what the heck's going on? The next thing you do is you call your cyber carrier. After you hang up with your IT guy and the cyber carrier, you call your insurance company, your local agent, and say, hey, this is what happened, and get them involved early and often. Your local cyber or your cyber carrier typically has 24/7 hotlines that will assign the breach specialist. They come in, calm everyone down, and get everyone on the same page. They work with your IT team or the guy in the basement and pair them with an IT forensics company and a ransomware recovery firm. Insurance steps in, pays for any fines you're getting hit with, any crisis communication. They set up entire rooms, call centers, you name it, just to handle calls coming in about your attack. They handle emergency expenses and IT forensics. Another thing that Ken mentioned is these things take time. And if you're a business that could lose millions of dollars per hour, time is money. So we're going to talk about business income and what it costs while you're down and what insurance helps with. One thing I will point out is there is a waiting period before your business income kicks in. I only mention this because I've seen manufacturing plants that make millions of dollars per hour have a 24-hour waiting period. So you're willing to risk 24 million bucks before your business income kicks in. And I've also seen, retail shops with a 0 income or 0 hour waiting period that they're paying money for, and they might lose $1,000 a day. So that's a factor that not a lot of people think about, but I want you to check your cyber policy and see what yours is. So after the initial breach response, insurance steps in and pays for the costs associated with restoring your system to where it was before the attack. Income loss from being without your system, additional expenses like renting a new system to temporarily replace your compromised one, third-party liability arising from the attack. So that's if during your attack, one of your vendors becomes compromised and you're found negligent, so they sue you for what it costs to get up and running. This kicks in, and that's the third party that we talked about, that only 4% of claims are. That's part of it. It also comes in and replaces any hardware that might have been what we call bricked. Basically, the underlying software on some of the hardware today, routers, modems, you name it, can be ruined if the data is corrupted or not installed properly. Ken, you're a little bit more of an expert at this than I am, so I'm not going to try to explain it, but they'll also replace the hardware. So those are costs that people don't think about when it comes to ransomware. I mentioned that your insurance company will broker a ransomware recovery firm. That recovery firm consists of experts who deal with nothing but ransomware. They know every individual strain and even have a rating system that shows the likelihood of you getting your data back after you pay the ransom. This is their bread and butter. They are the experts. Insurance companies are not the experts of ransomware. These guys are. When I say these guys, Coveware is one of the biggest names in the industry. They're a ransomware recovery firm, and they know that bad actors are only defaulting on their payment 2% of the time. That 98% success rate is due to them being experts at what they do. But I do want to point out the last two sentences in red from this quote I pulled from their report. We are increasingly seeing corruption of operating systems and permission registries. Rebuilding machines and permission policies often add substantial downtime costs. So you get your data back, but they're warning about all of the corruption that could potentially still happen even after you get your data back. And that's what insurance helps with. Now, this is a graphic. I just saw it the other day on a webinar presented by Catherine Rudo from Nationwide, and she actually interpreted it from 35 Views of Cyber Risk by John Donald. So this thing has been looked at by some pretty big names, and I love the message that it gets across. The criminal risk is tiny. The effort that they have to put in is minuscule, but every victim that gets hit, it could be game over for their business. It's so lopsided that everybody needs to have their defenses up, whether it be on the one side of the sword or the other. And it breaks down how big business interruption, system restoration, forensics can be in relation to the ransom itself. So just take a look at that and sit back and go, those are real. That's real. So in there, I mentioned system restoration. System restoration is one of the largest costs of business interruption. So your business interruption that covers this much, system restoration will cover 2/3 of it. Corrupted documents that may be unencrypted, but they may be in a format that your system still can't read. One example of this is a company stored all of its information in Excel spreadsheets and databases. And after the encryption, it moved the commas. It got rid of all the commas and it replaced the zeros with a different symbol. So they had to hire somebody to come in and fix all of those documents. It took thousands of hours, lots of overtime, lots of added expense there. Insurance covered it. The next thing is the clean backups. Even if your company has an excellent off-site backup policy that gives you a week's worth of backups, what happens when the bad actor compromised your system a month and a half ago? All your backups are compromised. Or what happens if your backup is linked to the same server? Your backup is compromised. Insurance comes in and helps restore, recreate the data just how you had it. Next, we're jumping down to notification. As I mentioned in a previous slide, every state has a different law for breach notification and the breach of privacy. Breaches of millions of people cost tens of millions in notification costs to abide by state laws. Due to those laws and other governing body regulating certain industries like healthcare and banking, the cost of notifying and rectifying in the event of compromised data, it extremely varies. Personally, this is not anywhere in stone. I like to throw out the number $8 per record for my small contractors who don't really deal with a lot of sensitive data, but they might have social security numbers of their employees. They might have federal ID numbers. They might have stuff stored on a spreadsheet. And for my doctors and lawyers, I think that cost is probably closer to $400 per record, just because they'll have governing bodies and there could be unexpected costs that I don't exactly know. The baseline I got for those numbers was from a graph I saw on a Digital Guardian website, I think it was. They go deep into ransomware, but those costs have no doubt changed. So that's my ballpark. So if you have 100,000 data points, figure $8 per compromise, that's 800 grand. It might be on the high side, might be on the low side, but it gives you an idea that it's it's definitely an impact. Finally, we're going to talk about reputation. We hear big attacks every day in the news. There are people out there, forensic accountants, they look through business records and see how that publication negatively impacted their sales, their revenue, their overall perception. They work with your PR team, if you're big enough to have a PR team, or maybe you as a business owner, and they tell you, don't put stuff on Facebook. Here's what we're doing. This is what we recommend you throw on Twitter because that's a higher click rate. They also take into account any contracts that you may have lost due to this leak of data if they were negatively infected, as well as your overall public image. So at the end of the day, cyber insurance when it comes to ransomware is not just we pay the ransom and good luck. It covers all aspects. But one thing that doesn't really get talked about is a whole different type of attack, and that's social engineering. I only want to bring it up after the big scary thing called ransomware because this is what's actually happening in small communities. Not that ransomware isn't, but we see this at our agency, our small local agency, locally owned agency. And so social engineering, Ken, why don't you take over and tell us a little bit about what social engineering is?
Yeah, Travis, thank you. I think, yeah, we had a slide to kind of visualize some of this stuff, but yeah, I mean, social engineering really is, in its most simple definition, art and science of getting people to do what you want them to do. And usually for the bad actor, that is getting people to give up personal information. That could be passwords, user ID, social security numbers, credit card numbers, basically anything that a bad actor wants. And they do this by establishing trust. Maybe they are, pretending to be somebody of authority, and making people believe that this is a person that they should or can give this information to. Kevin Mitnick, I kind of quoted him there, but he's a famous hacker turned good guy in our industry. He often warns that social engineering of the human element is the biggest weakness. At the end of the day, we could have all of this technology, firewalls and endpoint security, which are all still very, very important, but the weakest link still is human nature. So what happens usually is the bad actor will take a common path right to gather this information, and the first step is researching the target. And that could be social media, that could be websites, it could be newspaper articles, magazines, any public accessible information, just to kind of get more information about the target. And they use that information to help make contact, maybe build rapport or trust during an infiltration. TAC comes shortly after that, with the goal, of course, getting into systems, getting the passwords, and then when they get that information, they'll leave. But what we see a lot of, social engineering is done through phishing emails, but it's not uncommon to have bad actors make telephone calls, basically posing as tech support, fooling people into giving up login credentials. It's really, really, really important, and again, Travis mentioned this, on the preventative side of the sword, to take security awareness training seriously as part of an overall security posture and layered approach. And that companies then also establish policies to make sure that their staff is verifying authority before giving up information. I guess our parents were right, Travis? Don't talk to strangers. But I do want to mention one interesting story. I talk, giving some examples of social engineering. People get emails with fraudulent links or data. Maybe they'll get a phone call, text message. But baiting is also, kind of a big deal, not as much as it used to be. 'Cause people are kind of getting smarter to that. But Kevin Mitnick, the same guy that I mentioned earlier in the quote, he actually does consulting, and he worked with a kind of a large organization that had a robust, well-run professional IT team. And this IT team was very confident, borderline arrogant that that their stuff was protected. So obviously Mitnick took this as a challenge. So what he did is he actually bought a printer from a local retailer, took it, unboxed it, took the CD-ROM that normally had the print drivers, right, to install on your computer, relabeled it, put on some of his own malware onto that CD-ROM, repackaged the printer, and then he sends it to the CEO of the company, right? The CEO says, "Hey, cool, I get this free printer." Has their IT team, unpackage it, install the printer, and in so doing, installed Mr. Mitnick's pre-packaged malware. Game over, right? Social engineering, education, training, verification, all these things are important. Travis?
Yeah, I like that. The amount of people that will pick up a flash drive they find in a parking lot, stick it right into their work computer just to see what's on it, boggles my mind. So how does insurance help that, you ask? You get tricked, you get duped, you accidentally send money to people. Insurance is there to help the financial side. That might be time down. It might be you actually sending funds. It might be your customer getting duped because somebody's pretending to be you because your system was secretly hacked. It's about making it right. And at the end of the day, that's what insurance is about, making you whole, coming back to where you were before the cause or before the attack. So social engineering is the leading cause of funds transfer fraud. Funds transfer fraud is similar to the claim example that we looked at before, so I'm going to go back to it. In this claim example, instead of being perpetrated through email, like Ken said, it was done over the phone, and it was all due to a hack. So they may have used social engineering to get the credentials to get in. In this case, it was a bad email, but they picked up the phone. They made you believe that you could trust them. They were somebody that you knew. They did that through data that they discovered while they were looking you up, doing background checks. That is technically both social engineering. I want to go ahead and start to wrap up my summary here. We're at about 40 minutes. Hopefully we can get some Q&A time. These are key coverages to look for in your insurance policy. Now, keep in mind, every carrier has a different language and different definitions and calls these things differently. Please talk with your local insurance agent and make sure that your cyber policy covers this. If there's any confusion, call me, email me, let me know. My contact information is going to be on the back slide. I'll gladly help interpret for you. Granted, I need the whole picture, but these are the key coverages that I want you to look at. Now, for the final summary, I'm coming back to the double-edged sword. At the end of the day, no system is 100% secure. As even Ken said, there is that human element. With the resiliency of the bad actors and the evolving world of technology, it's not if you're going to be hit, it's when. Insurance is about mitigating that risk. You can't hold your guard forever. There's always going to be that one that gets through. So in return, I strongly encourage my prospects to take a step back and get a professional IT audit of their network, their procedures, their policies, their contingency plans prior to coming to me, because I want them to understand what they have. The main benefit is I can also look at that data and custom fit a policy that protects the risks that they're most exposed to. For example, that waiting period, most people look right over that as if it were a deductible. But if you look at it, how much are you going to lose per hour per day? That's a big deal. An example is a general contractor who owns one computer, but does all of his banking transactions with his other companies via wire transfers, is a completely different exposure than that manufacturing plant I talked about that would lose millions of dollars per hour when they're down. I look at those factors as well as the IT audit and the procedures they have in place, and I talk with my underwriters. I'm not talking to computers, I'm talking to people that are looking at the account, that are giving you the discounts because you've done the legwork to make sure that your network is secure. As Ben Franklin once said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That has never been more true than in today's cyber landscape. I want to say thank you guys for stopping by, giving me some time out of your day to learn about something that's, quite honestly, I think it's a lot of fun to learn about, but the word cyber and the word insurance are like going to the dentist. No offense to the dentists out there for some people. Ken, can you open this up to questions?
Yeah. So I've got a few questions here. I guess before I do that, thanks for putting that slide up. Travis, and on my contact information, if you guys have any questions or you want to talk a little bit about reducing cyber risk in your environments, from either the IT preventative side or from the mitigation recovery side, please, I'd love to hear from you. But yeah,
Ken,
so
the IT audits.
Yeah. So one of our probably our fastest growing areas of our business, which I guess is probably not surprising, is on doing security risk assessments. So we have a sister company called Due North Information Security, and we provide security risk. Do a lot of stuff with HIPAA. We're working through the CMMC stuff for Department of Defense. And from the North Star side, we do kind of a smaller miniature version of that for our managed service customers as well to kind of help reduce risk. But I got a couple questions here, Travis. So you kind of covered this, but maybe it'd be helpful to reiterate it. Mark's asked, how about paying the ransom? Is ransom payments covered by insurance? And obviously that's probably an open-ended question, but we talked earlier about maybe certain types of coverages. We'll handle that. Can you maybe just elaborate or reiterate how much of ransom payments are covered? Yeah.
So typically your full cyber limit will be good towards a ransom. The ransom recovery firms that I talked about have professional negotiators that will get the bad actors on the phone and talk the price down. And they may be asking $1 million, but they'll take $100,000. And your insurance will cover that as long as you have something that says ransomware or extortion somewhere in your cyber policy. There might be a deductible. It might be $2,000, it might be $5,000, it might be $10,000, depending on what you set up, that you'll have to pay out of pocket. But at the end of the day, yes, insurance will cover it. Most of the time, they won't force you to pay it, though. I know a lot of times, like the city of Baltimore, for example, put their foot down and said, we are not paying the ransom. Insurance picked up a lot of those other expenses. They didn't pay the ransom, though. At the end of the day, if your insurance agent or your insurance company and you agree that paying the ransom is the best thing to do, they'll pay for it.
Yeah, and I kind of want to segue on that same concept of, and get your thoughts, Travis, about the October 1st advisory from the Treasury Department regarding ransomware payment. Can you comment on that at all and kind of in context with this?
Yeah.
There's lots of stuff going on about this, right?
Yeah, so in October, the beginning of October, I think it was OFAC put out an advisory stating paying ransoms might be going against international trade regulations due to sanctions on foreign countries. and you could potentially be looking at a fine of up to $20 million. They didn't make a law. They didn't put this out there and say this is against the law. You're going to be prosecuted. Watch your back. Basically, I think this is more of a foreshadow. This is looking back at the city of Baltimore. They didn't pay their ransom because they're taking a stance on it. I think the U.S. government, in years, months, I don't know, to come, might start passing laws saying you can't pay the ransom or you can only pay to these countries. But at the end of the day, Coveware, the ransomware recovery firm that we were talking about, I know they work with OFAC, they work with the FBI. They're not going to advise you to break the law. So have faith that the professionals will do the right thing. That's about what I can say with that.
Yeah, and kind of in addition to that, obviously, focusing time and budgets to prevention so you don't end up in that situation is super important. But I will second Travis's comment regarding Coveware. That example I gave about the regional data center that we help consult with, they contracted with Coveware to provide the ransom negotiations, and you're right, it started out at like $250,000, and they went through that same process, and they're more than professional, and they did a really good job. So next question I have here is, have you heard now that the DoD is suggesting that you keep one backup in an offline format? How are people doing that? Tape? So I could maybe comment a little bit on that. Really what we're talking about, is the ability to make a backup that cannot be altered in any way, right? And we've been doing this for decades, right, in IT, and it's really under the concept of write once, read many, or worm, right? And as this person asked about tape, that used to be really the only option we had. Is there were actually tape media systems that we could do backups that were write once and never overwrite again, and then you take those tapes and you take them off site. Since then, of course, some of that technology's evolved. We've made backups onto mobile media like CD-ROMs or Blu-ray discs, and that is still a viable option. But there are actually a lot of organizations now that are writing, and they have access to worm-based backup software systems, right? Amazon Glacier has a worm-compliant storage option. Azure Blob now just announced that they have immutable storage as well to kind of meet those regulations regarding HIPAA compliance, PCI, and even some of the stuff for the SEC. So there are a few different options out there for that capability. And if that's something that that you as an organization through your risk planning seems like it's a high priority, it's definitely something we can talk about. Another question, what cyber carriers does Bowen and Associates resell? Travelers, question mark?
Yeah, so we do have Travelers. They're one of our big ones. We also have Hartford Steam Boiler. They go by HSB. We sell CFC. They're one of the leaders. They've been in it forever. Beasley, Corvus, Tokyo Marine. Those are some of our big ones. I'm probably going to get in trouble because I didn't list somebody. But each of our standard carriers, like Acuity, United Fire Group, Columbia, they all have little add-on programs that I call tokens that honestly are better than nothing. They might not give you $500,000 or $1 million limits, but they might give you 50,000 in the event that your system was compromised and your data was stolen. That's way better than a kick in the pants, so the old saying goes. But yeah, almost every one of our carriers that we sell, if you go to bowenassociates.com, we have a full list of our carriers. Some of the newer cyber carriers aren't on there. We do end up brokering a couple of them out, but we do work directly with Travelers on a daily basis. Actually, a lot of our policies go through Travelers. I will say this though, the London markets that you have to pay a little extra to get them, they have a more, I don't want to say more broad. They can change quicker because they don't have to go by state regulations. So if we have a substantial risk that's always changing, I like to stick them in that market. But again, we look at this on a case by case basis, and I compare all of my forms that my carriers have, and I compare it to your business, where you're at in your journey. Does that make sense, Ken?
Yeah, totally. Definitely don't want a kick in the pants.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. What are some common things that we can do as businesses to prevent breaches without breaking the bank? And I think I can maybe comment on that. Obviously Travis during his sword slide addressed this. And it's something that we get asked quite often, and so we often recommend that organizations, obviously take a layered approach to security. Not, there's not just one silver bullet that's going to take care of this and protect you. But some of the, the low-hanging fruit certainly is making sure that you or your IT team keep your systems patched, right? All the vulnerabilities that happen through phishing and smishing and social engineering, there's a lot that assume that there's a vulnerability that's not been patched. So keep the stuff patched. Second is enable two-factor, multi-factor authentication on stuff that's really, really important to you. The banks already do this, right? When you log into a banking system online, you have to provide two forms, a token or something, and as well as your user ID and password. Certainly make sure you have good backups. Make sure your business continuity plan accounts for how much downtime you can afford and how far back you need to go back, for restoring your data. Make sure you have a very robust security awareness program. As Kevin Mitnick says, the weakest link is your employees. So make sure that you are educating them and providing them with as much information to make sure that they make good decisions on how they manage themselves online. Certainly October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so North Star, along with Bowen, a lot of organizations are posting a lot of these tips and tricks and myths, about IT security. This is the month that we talk about it. I don't know if it's because cyber breaches are scary, and so it's the month of Halloween. But either way, it's a great time for to re-educate all of your people. That is it. Oh, one more. It looks like. Oh yeah. So could you provide copies of the slides? I'd like to share for discussion with our company management team. Absolutely. What we will be doing is this whole recording is, or this whole webinar is being recorded. So we will be sending out links to be able to send to you guys, and you can send it to management, coworkers, employees to rewatch. And then I'm sure we'll just also include with that a bundle to send the PowerPoint presentation as well. But all this information will be out there for everybody. That looks like all the questions for now. Certainly, if you have any follow-up comments, questions, suggestions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Travis or myself. Our entire goal and purpose is to help you guys as organizations protect your reputation, protect your companies, and it's a great partnership that we have over with Bowen. So, Travis, do you have any parting words?
Yeah, actually, I just got a text message asking about the dark web scan.
Yeah.
If you guys are interested in that for your business, in that packet we send out, there'll be a form that all you need to do is email it to me. It's going to ask 3 basic questions. It's going to ask the business name, the business website, and the gross sales, the annual sales. Those are the 3 questions I need. It'll be a form in that packet. Send it back to me, and I'll get it taken care of for you.
Yes, sounds good. Anyway, guys, thank you. This is an important topic, and I appreciate everyone's commitment to spending some time learning about it. Again, thank you, everybody, and have a good day.
Thanks.